All right. Good afternoon, everyone. I want to welcome you to the Land Use and Transportation Committee. My name is Malia Cohen. I'm the chair of this committee. To my right, to be joining us shortly, is the vice chair, Supervisor Scott Weiner, and at my left is Supervisor Aaron Peskin. Our clerk today is Erica Major. I'd like to thank Phil Jackson and Jesse Larson from SFGov TV for broadcasting this meeting. Madam Clerk, are there any announcements?
Yes, please make sure to silence all cell phones and electronic devices. Completed speaker cards and copies of any documents to be included as part of the file should be submitted to the clerk. Items acted upon today will appear on the September 6th Board of Supervisors agenda unless otherwise stated.
Thank you. Could you call item 1?
Yes. Item number 1 is an ordinance amending ordinance number 1061 entitled Regulating the Width of Sidewalks.
All right. So DPW is the sponsor of this legislation, and I think we have Bruce Storrs here to present. Welcome. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Pardon me if I screw this up. I don't do this very often. I think you have in your package the SUR map.
Yes, we do.
Which is what I have there on screen. This is Order 184923 for various sidewalk changes around Assessor's Block 3911. Lot 1, it's a new residential and a semi-commercial development. June 4th, City Planning gave us general plan conformance. DPW got no we got no objections from affected city agencies or private utility companies. Proposed ordinance changes official sidewalk widths, various locations. You have the Q20-820 map memorializing that. You have a copy of the general plan consistency that was, I just said, approved on June 4th. And that's it. I would encourage you to help move this forward.
Okay, well, thanks for the short presentation. Let me see, colleagues, are there any questions or comments that you have for Mr. Storrs? Thank you. All right, seeing none, let's go ahead and go to public comment. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for public comment on item 1. Just as a reminder, you'll have 2 minutes to speak. You'll hear a soft chime indicating 30 seconds remaining on your time. Is there anyone that'd like to speak on item 1? All right, seeing none, public comment is closed. Okay, come on.
I had trouble finding the room. It wasn't posted downstairs.
Please, the time is yours.
Thank you. And this is about the interim controls? No. Okay.
This is about sidewalk width changes. Okay. Public comment is closed at this time. Thank you. All right. Colleagues, is there colleagues, this is agendized as a committee report, so I'd appreciate, excuse me. Yes.
Madam Chair, I would make a motion to forward item 1 to the full board with recommendation as a committee report.
Thank you, Supervisor. I appreciate that. And without objection, that motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk?
Item number 2 is a resolution imposing interim zoning controls for an 18-month period in the Castro Street Neighborhood Commercial District to require conditional use authorization by the Planning Commission under Planning Code Section 303.
Excellent. Supervisor Weiner is the author of this item and will...
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for agendizing this item for today. Colleagues, this legislation will impose interim zoning controls for the Castro Neighborhood Commercial District to require conditional use authorization from the Planning Commission for pharmacy and medical service uses. The requirement for conditional use is fair and consistent with this particular NCD, where many uses already require a conditional use. Within 1 block of the intersection of 18th and Castro, which is in many ways the heart of the Castro neighborhood, there are approximately 3 existing pharmacies and 2 medical service uses. An important aspect of a vibrant and thriving commercial district is the diversity of uses. An overconcentration of a few uses, particularly uses that are not necessarily retail and unique in nature. We want thriving retail uses and unique uses, it can really jeopardize the health of our neighborhood-oriented commercial districts. Last year, colleagues, you may recall, I authored legislation that the Board of Supervisors unanimously passed requiring conditional use for medical services in the 24th Street Noe Valley neighborhood commercial district. These interim zoning controls will allow us the time to analyze and study how best to legislate a permanent solution to the overconcentration of these types of uses in the Castro NCD. I have distributed a few amendments, adding some additional findings to better document the legislative intent of these interim controls along the lines of the statement that I just made, specifically relating to the mix of uses in the Castro NCD, the overconcentration of medical and pharmacy uses, and so forth. So, colleagues, subject to public comment, I will ask the committee to adopt the amendments and to forward this item with recommendation as a committee report. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Wiener. Is it all right if we go to public comment at this time? Okay, ladies and gentlemen, item 2 is up. If you'd like to comment on this item, please come forward.
Good afternoon. I support a healthy, diverse commercial corridor in the Castro. An essential aspect of a healthy commercial corridor is a good mix of uses. Too much of one makes the neighborhood less interesting. For businesses where there's already high level of concentration in one, such as pharmacies or other related uses, it's important that a high level of consideration is paid to new or relocated uses so that the community can weigh in on what makes most sense for the neighborhood. A conditional use authorization helps ensure that the community's voice is heard. I think that the interim controls will help ensure the Castro isn't overconcentrated with pharmacy and related uses, and I support these controls. Thank you for the measured approach and for keeping the health of the Castro district in mind. I urge you to support the legislation.
Thank you. Next speaker? Anyone else? All right. Public comment is closed at this time. Thank you. Supervisor Wiener, are there
Yes. I think
amendments?
Supervisor Peskin may have a
Oh,
question.
I'm sorry. Supervisor Peskin.
No, I was just going to make a general comment around neighborhood commercial districts, which is, I think, insofar as there are some 20 neighborhood commercial districts throughout the city in all of our supervisorial districts, it's generally my belief that constituents in each of our districts know what kind of tailoring of NCD controls are needed, knows when there's an overconcentration. So I would move the additional finding amendments and would be happy to send this item as a committee report to the full board with recommendation after Supervisor Wiener's comments. But I think all of these neighborhood commercial districts were meant to be dynamic and not static, and were meant to adjust to the challenges of the time. For instance, in North Beach, it's been everything from ground floor financial institutions that were eating up the kind of neighborhood serving spaces, and eventually we put a limit on those. In certain neighborhoods, we have actually banned formula retail. In other neighborhoods, conditional use is required for formula retail chain stores. So sounds like there is an overconcentration of medical services and pharmacy uses in the Castro, and in order to help create that fair and equitable balance, I think that Supervisor Wiener's controls make good sense.
I agree. Supervisor Wiener's controls do make good sense. And a motion was made by Supervisor Peskin, and without objection, that motion passes
And so to
as
clarify-
amended. Thank
Okay.
you.
So adopting the amendments and then forwarding it with recommendation as a
believe you
committee
said it-
report.
All of those words were uttered.
We
you.
said that. Thank you.
Great.
All right. Item 3.
Item number 3 is a resolution imposing interim controls to require replacement space and conditional use authorization for conversion of production, distribution, and repair use for the arts activities use.
Thank you. So, colleagues, I'm the author of this item. I introduced these interim controls in an effort to see if we could negotiate a legislative solution to some of the issues that we're hearing about regarding the loss of PDR and art space in the Mission and the South of Market area instead of a ballot measure. However, after several hearings at the Rules Committee and discussion at last week's full board meeting, it appears that there is no desire to place controls for these areas on the, it appears that there is a desire to place these controls on the ballot in November. So therefore, after public comment, I'd like to propose that we continue this item to the call of the chair. So with that said, I'd like to open up this item to public comment.
Hi, thank you. I really appreciate your listening to the public comment and forwarding the legislation as a ballot measure. As one of the artists who is organizing the various arts organizations and artists to try to come together in light of the massive loss that we've had of diversity, of creativity in the city, and even the ballot measure, it falls really short of where we hope to get. We have to not only stop the bleed of, and I'm so delighted that Supervisor Cohen, you want to join in helping to try to figure out how we can not just stop the bleed, but to reverse the over-gentrification and monoculture of the city and try to find a way to encourage cultural development in the city and try to invite back our nonprofits who have fled. We lost Sierra Club after 100 years of being established in the city. It's kind of embarrassing to lose some of the nonprofits and some of the arts organizations and artists we've lost, and the diversity as well. And it's just so critical that we find ways to stop the bleed of the loss and then try to find ways to incentivize development of cultural spaces with either tax incentives or something else that we could do to be creative. And I really appreciate everybody trying to work together to say this is the first step, the ballot measure, but it doesn't go anywhere near far enough. And we have to stop the approval in the pipeline, blanket approval, and start to move towards a one-to-one replacement of any PDR loss and recovery of some of what we lost. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any other members of the public that'd like to speak on item 3? Okay. Public comment is closed at this time. Thank you to the commenter for rushing down. Colleagues, I'm going to make a motion that we continue this item to the call of the chair. May I have a...
Without objection.
Without objection? Thank you. Without objection, this motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk, could you call item 4 and 5 together?
Item number 4 is a resolution declaring the intent of the Board of Supervisors to order the conditional vacation of portions of streets that exist within the subphases 1A and 1B of the Park Merced Development Project area. And item number 5 is an ordinance ordering the conditional vacation of portions of streets that exist within the subphases 1A and 1B of the Park Merced Development Project.
Okay, we've got Paul Mabry from DPW here to present on these items. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Good afternoon, chair members. Thank you for this opportunity. The Park Merced development is a large, multi-phase, multi-year development that's governed by a development agreement. In the case of the street vacation requests, they're tied in with the first 2 sub-phase subdivision applications. That application was received by the Department of Public Works in February of 2015. We circulated to all those interested city agencies, including the Department of City Planning. We received Department of City Planning approval on August the 24th of 2015, and we granted, August the 6th, we granted tentative map approval, which basically allowed the project to proceed to this point on August the 24th. The project sponsor has requested that the city vacate portions of the streets to realign them. And I'm showing you the subphase that's in the northwest portion of the project. I don't know if you can see this clearly, but there's a red hatched area and a green hatched area. The green is what the city will receive in a future dedication, and the red is the portion that's being requested to be vacated. The net gain to the city, in conformance with the development agreement, is the city receives a surplus after this is over. The second portion of the development area is down in the southeast corner of the Park Merced area. And again, we've got the red hatched areas shown for the vacations and the green to be dedicated portions. The subdivision maps have extensive conditions of approval which foresaw this happening and have conditioned future dedications and future street improvements as part of this process. If you have any questions, I can answer any specifics.
Let's see. Are there any questions, colleagues? Supervisor Peskin?
No, I mean, I generally vote against vacating streets, but in this instance, it's really a like for like and as part of a program that the board approved pursuant to a development agreement. And unlike the matter that I dissented in last week, where we were actually giving up a city street and not replacing it with another city street, this situation is different, and I will be supporting it.
All right, thank you. We're going to go to public comment. Oh, I'm sorry, Supervisor Wiener.
Thank you. Just a quick question. So the general plan referral has two specific conditions in it. The action today, just to confirm, by this committee and by the board will not preclude the imposition of these conditions on the final map. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. We've got conditions of approval on the tentative map. Those are in the past. The final maps will come up probably in the next few months, but those will not be allowed to be recorded or finalized until those conditions from the planning department are met.
Okay. And does the department support imposing these conditions?
No. No, we've endorsed them and they're included in our approvals.
So let me
So I think
question: does the department support including these conditions, imposing these conditions?
Public Works?
Does the Department of Public Works support imposing these conditions?
Yes, we do.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, so we have a few actions that we need to take on this item, but before we do that, let's go ahead and open up to public comment. Ladies and gentlemen, if there's anyone that'd like to speak on items 4 or 5, please come up. Okay, seeing none, public comment is closed. So there's a few actions that we need to take on these items. First action, we need to amend item 4. The first action is to amend item 4, which would include the date that the board will sit as a committee as a whole to hear the street vacation. So this change would be to the first further resolve clause on page 8 of the resolution to state that the board will hear the vacation on September 6th at 6 September 6th at 3 o'clock. May I have a motion to make this change?
So moved.
Thank you. And without objection, the motion passes. Thank you. The second action is for item 5. Item 5 must come out of committee without a recommendation, but item 4 can move forward as a committee report. So, colleagues, I just want to ask that the item 4 that is before us today be moved as a committee report. However, pursuant to our standard practices on street vacations, items 5 will need to be forwarded to the full board without recommendation to the September 6th meeting. Is there a motion on these two items?
Madam Chair, I would move item 4 as amended be forwarded with recommendation as a committee report for August 2nd, and that item 5 be moved with recommendation to the meeting of September 6th in the normal course of business.
All right, I appreciate that. Thank you. Without objection.
Did you public comment?
Hold on. Sorry. I did take public comment. There was no public comment. Mr. John Givner, okay, thank you. Without objection, both these motions pass. Thank you. Unanimously. Is there any other business before this body?
There's no further business.
Thank you. This meeting is adjourned.